Um, Now we are going to continue with our discernment review, and we are currently on discernment for employers and employees. And I thought, what a coincidence. What a great time to talk about what is in the news everywhere today about essentially employers and employees. Does it ring a bell yet what I'm talking about? Yes. Because that's really essentially, when you boil it down, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about employers and we're talking about employees. And so I'm going to start out this evening talking about the lack of discernment for employees and employers in the NFL controversy. This controversy certainly demonstrates a vivid lack of discernment, common sense, and patriotism by all the NFL owners and a considerable number of the players. And we can look at this and it can be instructive to us because we're talking about, and we have been talking about, discernment for employees and employers. Now, much has been said about the First Amendment, the freedom of speech, regarding this controversy, and which really is not relevant to this discussion. And the reason it's not relevant to this discussion is because this First Amendment, freedom of speech, is directed towards government. It starts out by saying, Congress shall make no law. But we're not talking about government, we're talking about private business. And when you have a private business that you own, you can set the rules. You can say that there are certain things that you allow your employees to do, certain things you allow them to say, certain way that they dress, and you have the right of doing that. And they have the right, if they don't like the rules that you set, then they can go seek employment somewhere else. And so that's one of the many things that people are discussing that isn't even relevant. And I know they say, well, we agree that they have the right or the freedom of speech. And they do, but it's just not relevant to this conversation because we're not talking about the government being involved, requiring them or prohibiting them from doing anything. So, but when we're talking about working for someone in a private business, then we need to realize that when we sign on, that we agree to whatever their rules may be. And they have the authority to enforce those rules. You don't have the right to set your own agenda when you're on the clock. When you're there and you are, whether you're actually started working or whether it's immediately after you finished working, whether you punched out on a clock or not, when you are there, you are under the authority and the auspices of that company, of that business. And for you to take it upon yourself to set your own agenda isn't proper no matter where you work. You are not there to push your agenda. You are there to do whatever this employer has hired you to do. And you are to do it in a way that is not going to bode ill on that employer or his business. So automatically we see that something is not according to the order in which businesses operate. Because certainly we have a lot of coaches and players who have decided they're going to set their own agenda while they are on the clock, so to speak, while they are representing their employer. And I don't know, could be, but I don't think that they checked in with their employer before they decided to do what they did. I think it was Just they decided, well, we're going to do it, and they agreed, and they did it. Whether it was right or not does not depend on whether the employer went along with it or not. That is not what decides what is right and what is wrong, whether the employer agrees or disagrees. But in any case, we do not have the right to set our own agenda and do things that are going to aggrandize ourselves or whatever agenda that we may have. There's already a rule, by the way, condemning behavior of players who refuse to stand during the playing of our national anthem, but owners chose not to enforce it. Here is the rule, and I'm quoting it from the NFL's operation manual. Quote, during the national anthem, players on the field and bench area should stand at attention, face the flag, hold their helmets in their left hand, and refrain from talking. The home team should ensure that the American flag is in good condition. It should be pointed out to the players and coaches that we continue to be judged by the public in this area of respect for the flag in our country. Failure to be on the field by the start of the national anthem may result in discipline such as fines, suspensions, and/or forfeiture of draft choices for violations of the above, including first offenses. End of quote. So it's not as if they didn't know better to start with. This is a quote from the league spokesman who is named Joe Lockhart. He confirmed, quote, there will be no discipline handed down this week for anyone who was not there. He's referring on the field while the national anthem was being played. You just heard the rules of what they could happen, but he's saying there's not going to be any discipline handed down this week for anyone who was not there. He said, now listen to this quote. This is a quote from him. He said, the real effort here is to make progress in the community on issues of inequality and to not get distracted by political attacks or things that don't help us make progress. End of quote. And I started thinking, when did it become the NFL's job to make progress in the community on issues of inequality? When did that come about? When did that become their business, an issue, or something that they saw fit to handle during the time that people have paid to watch a football game? Furthermore, if their effort was to not get distracted by a supposed political attack, they failed miserably. And yet that's what he said. Again, he says, the real effort here is to make progress in the community on issues of inequality and to not get distracted by political attacks or things that don't help us to make progress. And I say, everything that he said is hogwash. Their job is to play football to entertain people who pay $100 a ticket to watch big guys move an odd-shaped ball up and down the field. That is their job. No one cares about what they think about inequality or anything else. When you put it that way, people might start thinking, $100 might be a bit much to watch a bunch of big men moving up and down the field with this odd-shaped ball. But that's essentially what they are paid to entertain people by doing that. People go to games, to sports, whatever it may be, to get away from all the other stuff. And up till now, they had the opportunity to do that. I'll say a little bit more about this. Well, I guess I'll say it now. Unfortunately, it has become politicized. Sports are now politicized. And the bad thing about that is once they become politicized, they're not going to go back. You go to watch a game, and it doesn't matter who is watching, whether they're a believer, unbeliever, whether they're Republican, Democrat, Independent, doesn't matter what their race is, doesn't matter anything. They just go there and have a good time because everything else isn't even seen in the sports. It's just enjoying a game, and now it has been polluted by politics. And that is a shame. So football has become politicized, and soon basketball and baseball will follow. You already have basketball players who have, like LeBron James. He's such a victim. He's got fame, he's got fortune, he's got all these things. And if you'll notice, all these people who have all the accoutrements of success and should be happy are very angry. They are unhappy people, which is a testimony to the fact that the scriptures say that if you think that wealth is going to help you and it becomes your God, you are going to be a miserable person. We see that all the time. So sports will never be the same. Will we see American athletes refuse to stand at in the Olympics for the national anthem? Wouldn't surprise me a bit. Depending on what happens in the next week or so, it could be like wildfire and spread everywhere, and sports will be permanently changed. Now, I blame the owners more than anyone else because they could have stopped it. The first time that this guy came out onto the field and he had socks that had embroidered on their pig faces with police hats and kneel down for the national anthem, he should have been given his check as soon as he went in. It says, we don't allow this here. And they already have it as a rule. It's the NFL operations manual. The only difference between that and the rule book is the operations manual isn't made known to the public, and the rule book is. But it is there. So I blame the owners more than anyone else because they could have stopped it. I bet they wish that they did now. But the cow is out of the barn, and they're in a fix. But they decided to be loyal to the NFL, its coaches and players, over loyalty to their country and the fans who had been so loyal to them over the years. And it appears that is going to cost them dearly, and rightly so. The only thing that supersedes the colossal wealth of the owners, coaches, and many of the players in the NFL is their colossal arrogance. They mistakenly believe that they could insult and offend the bosses, their fans. The fans are the bosses. The fans are the glue that holds everything together. Without the fans, there would be no team. The owners would have no team. Without the fans, there would be no players. What this guy, he just signed a contract for $135 million. I mean, when you just think about this, when you think about when you're talking about a game lasts 1 hour, and if they only play half of that, because either offense or defense, you could say they play about 30 minutes a week. Even if they play that long. A lot of time, it's not even that long. But if you played 30 minutes a week for a football season, and you did that, I don't know, 10 years? I don't know how long the contract is, and you got $135 million. I don't know how much that is an hour, but it's a lot more than I made when I was a plumber. And I made pretty good when I was a plumber. I don't know what it would pan out to be, but it would be colossal. And what is so strange is that they are trying to play the victim when they're multimillionaires and have everything, and yet they're the victim. So they mistakenly believe that they could insult and offend their bosses, the fans, by disgracing our flag, refusing to stand during a national anthem, and insulting our president without experiencing any consequences. Evidently, they thought that was what was going to happen. All these people that pay their salaries and pay the money for the coaches to have a team and for the players to have these humongous checks, even though they should have known that these are the flyover people. These are the ones that voted our president in, and yet they could pull a stunt by dishonoring and betraying the country in their face and think there was no consequences. Now that's the height of arrogance. It appears that they miscalculated in thinking that football is more important to the American people than our flag and national anthem and the thousands of fellow Americans who died to preserve them. Our flag is not about our president. Our flag is not about policemen. Our flag is not about race. It's about our country. It's about the Constitution. And all the people who love it and are willing to sacrifice and even die in order to preserve it. That is what they turned their back on and disgraced. Well, they didn't disgrace the flag, they disgraced themselves. The players had a choice to be loyal to their teammates or to be loyal to their country, and they disgraced themselves by choosing teammates over country. Shame on them. The guy that came out, you may have heard of him, I can't pronounce his name, for the Steelers. He was a war veteran. He was a hero. He served several tours. He was awarded the Bronze Star. He was the only one that came out to see the flag. And his coach had told everyone that he wanted 100% cooperation in not going out as they were required to do, even by the rules. And he went out and had his hand over his heart as the Star Spangled Banner was played. He was a tackle. Tackles on offensive tackle, that's what I play. Nobody knows who you are. You couldn't win a game without tackles, but in any case, they didn't know who he was. And so his jersey went from obscurity to number one in buying jerseys online. Yeah, well, I know. You're stealing my thunder. But unfortunately, even a hero can weaken. And his teammates were saying that he threw them under the bus. And now he says that it was kind of a mistake. He wasn't sure where he was and this kind of thing, which somewhat diminishes what it appears he was doing. And it just shows the peer pressure. And that's why I say these are grown men. These are educated men. And for them not to see that when that coach said we want to have 100% cooperation in staying here rather than going out there and honoring the flag, and you had one man that did it and then felt compelled to backtrack on that because of peer pressure, what he should have said is gone back into that room, and if any of them said you threw us under the bus, all he had to say is, look, I have loyalty to my team and to my teammates, but that's much lower loyalty than I have to my country. The only loyalty I have above my country is to God himself. That's all he had to say. And he wouldn't have to backtrack or feel the pressure or anything. And he would have stood out like a light. That's what we should be thinking as well. So they made the wrong decision by choosing teammates over country, and I say shame on them, and to this point it looks like they have not recanted this. Their priorities are not in order. And they are not mentally tough, nor do they have mental courage. They're cowards. They're afraid of what other team members may think. The owners are afraid of maybe what their players may think or what the public may think. And they're going to be held accountable for it, and rightly so. The Baltimore Ravens and Oakland Raiders game. Now, I think I have the teams right. I know it was the Baltimore Ravens, and I think they were playing the Oakland Raiders, but I'm not sure. But they were playing in England. It's in London. And it's nearly unthinkable of what they did. When the national anthem was played, they went down on one knee to disgrace it. When the British national anthem was played, they rose to their feet. Now, to show you how uninformed, how ignorant what they were doing is, the British are the ones that brought slavery to America. The British are the ones that burned down Baltimore. And they're standing for their national anthem and turning their back on our own. They are disgraced. I don't even think they should be let back in the country. But that's his opinion. Can you imagine in a foreign land that you have this done? This is unthinkable. And yet it happened. And it remains to be seen what's going to happen when Baltimore Ravens play and Oakland Raiders play. Are people still going to go to the game and pay all this money? When they do, what they're essentially saying is, you know what, our country doesn't matter. What really matters is football and these celebrities. That's what's really important, not our country. But the people have the opportunity to send a message that they understand, and that's hurting them in the pocketbook. I saw a picture of one of the stadiums. I can't remember which one it was, and it looked like it was empty. You know, it had like 4 tiers just all around, and you had to hunt to see are there even people there. And that was at the starting, when the kickoff. That's all the people that were there. They were reduced to selling the tickets for $14 a piece. And I say, good. That's too high. It's too high a price. $14 to watch traders. Many former loyal NFL fans have vowed to never buy another ticket or watch an NFL game. Somebody sent me an email, and it was full of YouTubes. And the YouTubes were these men, and they weren't young men. They were 50, 60 years old. And each one of them had their own story, but they didn't coordinate, but they were all doing the same thing. The first one I saw was a Steelers fan. And he had a thing, I don't know what you call it, but it's kind of like a bowl-like thing, and you put wood in it to stand around to stay warm in the winter. The first thing he did was take his Steelers jacket. He said, this is a $450 Steeler jacket. He tossed it in that deal. Then he went and got his hat. He got his banners. He got all that. He came. It was literally like this. He took 2 loads like this to bring it. And if you know how much that stuff costs, you understand. And he put it on the fire. On the deal. Put lighter fluid all on it, and then he lit it. He says, that's what I think about the Steelers. He said, they have crossed the line. He says, they may not know that they did, but he says, I was a tremendous fan. You know, and this is true because a lot of people pretty much worship football. They go wherever. That's all they know. That's their embodiment is supporting a fan. They're a fan supporting their team. And I don't know how many of these people have this idea. There was a guy from the Kansas City Chiefs, did the same thing. And he had some kind of deal, he had barbecue pit he put on, and he's burning it. And these you could see the fire in their eyes. And they said, these people are despicable. He says, I will never. He said, I won't even watch it on TV. And the Steelers are playing tonight. Now, I heard, isn't it the Steelers? Green Bay and the Bears. Oh, is the Bears? Okay, I thought it was Steve. Maybe it's Green Bay. Anyway, I heard them say that what they're going to try to do is that they're going to stand for the national anthem, but the players are going to hook arms like this. And what I'm thinking is, you know what? They're still trying to send a message during the national anthem. You don't send a message during the national anthem. You stand at attention, you face that flag, and you put your hand over your heart, and hopefully you're thinking about the sacrifice, the monumental sacrifice that people made in honor of that flag to show the freedom for our country. You don't give messages of any kind. It would take away. They're thinking about themselves when they do that, not their country. I'd never accept that. Even, by the way, that doesn't comply with their rules. They're supposed to face the flag, put their hand over their heart. Again, they're trying to suspend the rules for expediency to still try to get their point across. You see, this is a either or. Either you're going to stand for your country, or you're going to stand for people who are traitors. That's the way I see them, as traitors. Many believe that they have crossed the line, betraying their country. How can a nation endure if it is so polarized that large segments of its people are so partisan and self-centered and unpatriotic that they won't even respect or honor the symbols of their own country? How can a nation endure like that? You know, I'll tell you a quick little excerpt. I hadn't even thought about saying this, but I think I will because I think it's important. When I went to junior high school, I went to Frank M. Black Junior High School. And it was different because in elementary school, we had one teacher, and that was it. But in junior high school, you had a lot of different classes to go to and so forth. Well, they didn't have a homeroom for me, and so we had to meet that homeroom session in the cafeteria. And so we were in the cafeteria, and my good friend Paul Salzgiver was sitting beside me. And you know the fold-out chairs where the tables are and all. And he got up and he sat on the back of that chair, you know, he sat on it, had his feet on the seat, and was kind of rocking back. He says, "I bet you can't do this." And I said, "Well, you know, it's like waving a red flag in front of a bull." And so I got up on the seat, and I had my feet there, and we were rocking back like that. And then both of us felt something like a hand, but it felt about the size of a baseball glove. It was the assistant principal. They called him Baby Huey. I'm not making any of this up. And he said, "You boys follow me." The first class hadn't even started yet. And we had heard about, you know, he was huge. We had heard about how he could lift people up by when they paddle them with that paddle, just lift their rear end right up off the ground. And so to say we were nervous on the way there is just, it was more than that. So we get to the office, and you remember how you say it's bad, but it could get worse? It can always get worse. So I stroll into the office, and none other than my sister is sitting there because she's an office worker during that homeroom. And I'm coming in, hadn't even had the first class, and she said, "Couldn't even make it to the first class, could you?" And so, yeah, thanks. And so we go we had to sit there. He says, he had to go into his office first, and we had to sit there. And I was getting dirty looks from my sister and trying to visualize what it's like to have your rear end just go airborne from a huge paddle from a huge man. And so finally he calls us in there. We go in there, and he tells us how ashamed he was of us and how we did one of the worst things we could possibly do because we were doing it during the national anthem. They used to play it every day. Do you remember that? They would play the national anthem, and they would have a prayer. And it just so happened that when he challenged me, it was right before it started. And when I got up there and when we were rocking back and forth, it was already going, and that's when baby Huey walked in. And I really didn't get it that much. I mean, I thought, what was, I was so worried about the SWATs, I couldn't think of anything else. And so I went home, and I went ahead and told my mother because I knew my sister was going to. I thought maybe if I tell her first, it'd be a little better. And I was surprised because she had the same attitude that the vice principal had. I mean, and she said, I am so ashamed. And she never told me that she was ashamed of me. She said, I am so ashamed. I said, I didn't get in a fight or anything. She said, a fight would have been much better. I'm giving you this personal account because back then, children were reared to see the solemnity and the honor to our country by standing during the national anthem and facing the flag and putting your hand over your heart. I slipped one time and I never forgot it. I don't know if they're doing that anymore. But I do know this. There's going to be a lot of young kids that have these sports figures as they idolize these guys. And if they don't back away from their stance on disgracing themselves by disgracing their country, what is going to happen to these young people? Are they going to have the honor and respect towards the symbols of this country? I think not. So I don't know how a country can endure when you have a large segment of society that is so biased and self-centered and unpatriotic as to do something and then not relent. The NFL owners, coaches, and players may recognize that they made a huge mistake and seek forgiveness, but that seems doubtful. So far, they have doubled down on their treachery. If they continue to do so, they will pay a price which they indeed richly deserve in loss of respect and possibly loss of dollars. This is much bigger than what it appears just about a game. We are in cultural war. And this is a major offensive. This is a major battle in the culture wars. There are many people who could do what they did. For instance, Christians could rise up and say, we have Christians who have been fined and have been put in jail for standing for their faith. We could have people from every walk of life that would say, we're not going to stand for the flag. You could have the people who are for DACA. Depending on what happens, they can say, we're not going to stand for the flag. You could have people, environmentalists, who doesn't like the way things are going. I'm not going to stand for the flag. You could have every little gripe and complaint be validation not to stand for the flag because, look, these other people aren't doing it. You understand how contagious and how dangerous and dastardly this is? And so, I happen to have a bully pulpit. And I'm trying to use it. And I think it's time well spent. Everything that I'm saying you probably already know, or most of it anyway. But it needs to be reinforced. Have any of you talked to anyone for any length of time, for the most part, and not broached this issue? Yes. Start over.
Okay. Today when we went to the elementary school.
For CEF. Yeah, just get close.
Oh, okay. not only do they let us come there and teach about Jesus, but as we were walking down the hall, we heard them singing the national anthem. And they were teaching the children. Each classroom is teaching the national anthem. We stood there and listened and watched this woman teaching the children, and then they would repeat it back to her. And when they finished, I was standing there and I clapped and said, "Bravo."
Yeah.
And she said, "Thank you."
Well,
And we understand that they're teaching it in every classroom. That is a special, special school.
we need a lot more of them like that.
We do.
Did you have something, Rachel? Oh, okay. The problem is, and I am so grateful that and proud that happened in Brenham, Texas. I hope that it's happening around the rest of the country, that they're teaching the national anthem. But in our own state, Dallas, they just recently tried to put forth an initiative where they would do away with Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, and James Madison, that they would not allow their names in any history books because they were slave owners. And this is a cancer. I mean, to go back into that era and judge them as when things were the way they were then compared to what they are now. These people who are criticizing and would make those decisions aren't worthy to shine the boots of these men. They were phenomenal men, but they were men. They were fallible. And slavery back then, I've already went over all that. That was, it was not illegal. It was not unlawful. Nearly everyone either had slaves or knew slaves and so forth. Yes, here, let me get you this.
Oh, did you hear how Cypress Fairbanks?
Close.
How Cypress Fairbanks decided to handle the national anthem? Yeah.
It's what now? What do they do?
The youth, they're going to do away with the playing of the national anthem.
Is that what they're going to do?
Listen, when you hear your own...
Wait a minute.
When you hear your own
Hold it!
feedback.
I can't hear what's going on. Here, will you take that over there too?
Let him straighten me out.
Well, we have, what, Junior from Sci-Fair here? Oh, excuse me. Woo, a senior. I know. I'm on her list. Okay, tell us, put it close.
They're not going to allow the national anthem to be played because they think that somebody will use it for purposes of political.
And who came up with that bright idea?
The sports association. I mean, it's not the high school. It's a separate organization.
Oh, I see. So the school doesn't have anything to say about it?
Well, it's not the school. It's not the school.
That's what I mean. The school has no say about that. But you know what the school could do? The school say, unless you play the national anthem, you're not going to have a team.
Well, it's not the Sci-Fair schools.
I know.
It's the sports association.
I know, but
separate, which is their teams are separate.
okay. Well, I can see a couple of ways to handle that. One way you can handle it is for the players and the people to do it anyway. I mean, there's got to be some remedy. But just to sit down and let some bureaucrat, some unelected person say, no, we're not going to allow the national anthem to be played because somebody might not like it, that cannot stand. It should not stand. And the people have... Do what? Oh, you did? You write an email? Will you share it with us sometime? Send it to me. Send it to me, and I'll see that it gets some air. Okay? See, that's it. Do it? Yeah, give him the mic. Yeah, real close. Right there. Closer?
Okay, well,
A little closer.
this hadn't
There you
just started.
Uh-huh.
This has been going on.
Yeah, for a long
years.
time. Yeah.
And back when I don't know when football decided that they could run this country, but they do.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, the owners are just, they just gutless.
Yeah, they're in solidarity with these players.
You know, they're gutless owners.
Yeah.
And when they decide that they can control a whole state, you know, like if the states did not have a Martin Luther King Day, they would not go to, if they'd been playing they would not have a Super Bowl in that state.
Yeah.
And that was the start.
Yeah, they're doing that with the LGBT thing too, like they
Right.
did in
All
South
that,
Carolina.
all that political kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And I always just kind of, I was bad as any of them about watching the Super Bowl. Well, I hadn't watched a whole Super Bowl game since.
Mhm.
But I would have been just as upset if they would have gone and forced the states to have a Ronald Reagan Day.
Mhm. Right.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
And the color didn't have anything to do with it. Because Martin Luther King was a fine man, in my estimation. What he stood for and how he tried to get things done, he did it in the right way. But I may not always agreed with him, but I respected him.
Mhm.
But to me, it would have been the same if it had been anything else. This country's in a whole lot worse shape than any of us imagine.
You're right about
Because
that.
this group,
Yeah.
this group of these people, they do not hold things just like the anthem and all that. They do not hold that in the same respect that normal Americans do. And they're not going to. And my youngest granddaughter is in college. She's a freshman. And in one of her classes the other day, the professor was up reading something. And in it, what he was saying, it became his and her, that he had to say
Mhm. Yeah.
in her. And this young man stood up. And he said, "Sir, I wish you wouldn't use those two words." And told him, I said, "Oh, yeah, okay." He changed his mind right there. And then in a little bit he read and he came to it again and he started saying, "Oh, I'm sorry," and apologized, and then went on like the young man said. Well, you know, what is that? You know, we're in a deep hurt.
Mhm.
And I don't know if we've got enough people in this country to stand up because they love this sports and everything so much. And I like sports as well as anybody.
Yeah.
But this stuff is
It's very
getting bad,
dangerous.
and it's not going to come out
That's
like
right.
we think it ought
No,
to.
no. The you know, we're at church. We're talking about these things. People say, "Well, you're supposed to be talking about the Bible." Well, what does the Bible call us to do? To be righteous, to do the right thing, and not only because it's ethical and moral and right, but for Christians to do what this professor did is, "Oh, well, I'll change. You know, I'm going to..." Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's not even grammatically correct because you have to replace the pronouns him and her with them. Him and her is singular and them is plural. But that nothing matters. It's the political correctness that everybody must toe the line. And that's why we have young people coming from these colleges that think that they need a safe place. And that that talking, just giving a speech is harmful, as if it's painful, and it shouldn't be allowed because it's like violence. They call it violence. That speech, if you are using your right of free speech to say anything that is contrary to political correctness, they claim that it's violence and it should be outlawed. In fact, most young people from these universities don't even believe that what they call hate speech, is covered by the freedom of speech, the First Amendment. There's just, you're right. And the reason I took all this time is because we're in a culture war. And so many Christians can say, oh, well, you know, what difference does it make? It's just football. No, it's a lot more than football. We're talking about a chance to make someone pay that is destroying our country. And make no mistake about it, that is what is happening. Because if people like these can take a pet issue and betray the flag and the national anthem, what is left? What will we not tolerate? We will tolerate anything if we will tolerate that. And if we don't stand for anything, then we'll fall for anything. And this country is doomed. What would World War II, if somebody came up with something like this and turned their back on the flag and didn't stand for the national anthem, they would probably have to find them a room in a hospital somewhere. I mean, because patriotism was strong then, because we were fighting for our lives. But today, it's like anything goes, and I think God honors Christians especially, who stand up. I'm not talking about violently attacking someone, but I'm just saying that we have a tool because we have free enterprise. All the people have to do is stop buying tickets, stop watching it on TV, and they will die on the vine. Is that too much to ask to have traitors get what they deserve? And if we don't do that, then we're not worth saving. That's my opinion. And listen, I like to watch football. I like college football better, but I like to watch a pro game, and I won't be watching it. I'm done with them. Because they do the survey, who all's watching, and then the ratings have to do with that. And hopefully the ratings will fall so low that the advertisers will start bailing. Well, but this is really, what I'm saying is, this is a test for America at this point. Are the people patriotic enough? Do they love their country enough to where they will not tolerate the betrayal of their country? Openly and defiant by prima donnas who are wealthy and famous. They just need to not do it. Time will tell. I hope. I would like to see the NFL go completely out of business. I would like to see Target go completely out of business. And if people would stand together for what's right and show how much they detest evil, it would happen. So we'll see what happens.
When this happened to my granddaughter, her older sister, who's already out of college, she told her mental principles because she didn't know what to call. She says, keep believing what you know is right.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to have to go, you have to go along with doing that.
Well,
And that's it.
I you know,
Because you'll either have to leave that flag
mm-hmm.
or you won't graduate.
Well, a lot of people are trying to make this about our president. And our president said it in a way that I think could have been said better. But he said what people were thinking. The flyover people, which we are in the middle of the country, think exactly the way he does. And of course, he stirs it up when what he said. But in one way, this is good. It's like how God tests us sometime. He tests to see if we are operating on our emotions or are we operating on Bible doctrine. This is a similar kind of test for our country, I believe. Are they going to tolerate this, tolerate anything? Because this is an evil. This is like cancerous. And if you don't call it to task, if you don't show that there's consequences for this, it'll take over the whole body and the body dies. Well, there's so much that's eroding in our, the things that are, and it's the toleration of things that we should not be tolerating. And And a lot of it has to do with the pastors, Garth, because the pastors aren't addressing this because someone in their congregation might think it's controversial, might not come back. If they don't come back, they might not have the money to pay all the bills in their big mansions they have. And the pastors need to be speaking out on this. If people knew their history, it's like the Black Regiment in the colonial days. If it wasn't for the Black Regiment, we'd still be bound to the Queen. It's our job to speak out on what is right. There is still a right and there's still a wrong. And if we don't stand for the right, then not only are we disgracing ourselves and our country, we're disgracing Jesus Christ, who is the one that we should be representing.
Well, in order for me to sell an NFL flag, I order it from the flag company, which is made overseas.
Mm-hmm.
Not made in our country. So I won't be selling it for them.
Okay. I need to get that on tape. I mean, on one of our members. Well, no, but it's important, Garth. It's important. Whether it even measures even the ripple on the pond, it doesn't matter. You're doing the right thing. Garth is in the flag business, and he just said that he will not sell, nor buy, nor sell another NFL flag. And he said, well, it's yeah, and they're not made in our country anyway. But see, if the masses would do just something like that, make a stab at what is right in your own little backyard. That's all of any of us can do. That's what I'm doing here tonight, taking up this time, making an issue out of this, because this is my bailiwick. I can do this. All of us can do something, and we need to do it to show that we are not going to take this laying down. Good. Make a video of it. That's what they've been doing. I'm serious. That's what all these... It impacted me so heavy when I watched these YouTubes of these. Now, they're not violent wackos. They were very measured in what they said, but you could see the deep anger in them. They had crossed the line. They had insulted and defamed and disgraced the flag and the national anthem. And they said, they're done. I mean, and they showed it by burning all these things. They're serious. They'll never watch another football game. I just hope it doesn't spread to the colleges. Now, if I was a coach in a college team, oh, I know it's in Little League. I saw that. But if I was a coach in college and they said, well, there was rumors that players were going to kneel down, I would say, any member of this team that kneels down will be out. He's not going to be part of this team anymore. And if the athletic coordinator, whoever he is, says, no, you can't do that, I said, yeah, I am doing it. Well, you can't do it and stay here. Bye. That's what it takes.
You know that coach that writes for News Reviews, that coach Benmore, he was working in a coach in I think it was college, and he went to court over it because he prayed with his team.
Yeah. Well, they have like...
About 5 or 6 years ago, and you didn't hear anybody talk about that. That was somebody praying, and they...
Did he win?
Yes, he did.
Well, that's why we didn't hear about it. For what you were saying about they were teaching the kids here in Brenham School, elementary school, how to sing the national anthem. For every act like that, you've got something like what Garth was talking about, these 8-year-old peewee football players out there and the coaches. At a game, they were playing the national anthem, and all of them had their back to the flag, one knee, and the coaches were leading them in it. I mean, so we have this dichotomy.
How little they are.
Yeah, their helmets look like wash tubs on their head.
Where were their parents?
I don't know, but hey, we're way behind time, and I appreciate your input because all of us need to do something, say something, whatever we can, to hit a lick for what's right, because that's honoring to our Lord as well. Let's close. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time we have together to focus on these things. This is what everybody is talking about and should be, because it's a big issue. And we pray that you will give us discernment and courage discernment to know when to speak, and the courage to speak, and the wisdom to know what to say. But that we will not retreat into the shadows and try to play it safe. We are here as your ambassadors and to stand for what is right and denounce what is wrong. And we pray that Christians all across this country will do that. That they will not think that, oh, well, I don't need to get involved. Because we can't help but be involved. We're in the devil's world, and yet we belong to Christ and we represent Him. So we pray that you will give us these tools and these benefits of your word and doctrine in our soul to have discernment and courage. We pray it all in Christ's name. Amen.